Hello, my fellow human beings. I'm Bug. And today, I'm gonna talk to you about something I absolutely adore. Welcome to Dreamworld, an analog horror series created by Rainbot. And today, I'm gonna do the impossible. I'm gonna create a timeline. I already did. Here it is. And today, I'm going to explain the timeline. If you haven't seen Dreamworld, you should definitely check it out. Now, some of these bits are more theories than actual points in the timeline that we know of because we're not given everything. So, I kind of had to put it together how I saw it would fit. Without further ado, let's begin. It all starts with two brothers in the distant future who live on the outskirts of a city and scavenge for supplies from the scrapyard. They would then take them back to their workshop where they would repair anything salvageable to eventually sell. Angus was content with making little gadgets and living a repetitive life, but his brother Edmund Avid Miser wasn't. One day when gathering supplies for his workshop, Edmund ran into a strange figure, Xavier. He told of many eldritch ideas, including essence, a power source found in the human soul. Even though this unhuman being that served practically as a god persisted Edmund not to experiment on essence, he still did anyway. Many deaths later, Edmund had constructed a gateway. The gateway was intended to bring Edmund to the world of the great travelers, aka this thing Xavier was. But it was very poorly built and didn't do that. Around this time, Angus had also found out about what Edmund was doing. This eventually leads to a fight, and both Edmund and Angus falling through the gateway. While Edmund remained alive, Angus was split into tiny soul fragments that Edmund would store in his old camera to prevent them from passing to the spirit world. Looking around, Edmund realized that he had found himself in the early 1800s, setting up the next portion of our timeline. By the way, Edmund has been growing eyes on his body, and now he looks like this. This brings us to the next portion of the timeline, the 1800s. Beginning here, Edmund has one main goal: bring Angus back. In doing this, for some reason, he changes his name to Litho. I don't know, because it's cooler. He plans to gather other souls to repair his brothers, and then eventually make a gateway to pass into the spirit realm where he can collect the other remnants of his brother's soul. To start this, he needs to start collecting other souls. So he befriends a very influential family and strikes a deal with them that he would receive their next born son, Allison. Allison is a pale young boy who plays the violin. Litho uses him to gather the souls of his audience. Though Allison isn't introduced to Litho until he turns 10, he still feels his presence in his mansion. As a gift for his 10th birthday, Allison is given a camera, the same camera that Litho trapped Angus's soul fragments in, and the same camera most of the series is shot from by Wyatt. But we're not there yet. Eventually, Allison dies, though he would end up haunting the mansion of his residence even after it gets turned into what we now know as the Dreamworld facility. Allison would also protect the spirit world from Litho until he gives that role to Damien in the future. Speaking of the future, in a small town of Ohio, a family-owned arcade owned by Carlos and Lucy Nicholson, called the Nickel Per Play Arcade, opens to great success. Sadly, not everything would be good for Carlos, as only a short time after his arcade opens, his wife, Lucy Nicholson, dies from a terrible sickness. Carlos is distraught by this and searches for a way to bring her back, but he can't bring people back from the dead. At least not by himself he can't. While spelunking in a cave system found below an old abandoned and collapsed mansion, Carlo meets Litho. Litho promises that he can bring Lucy back from the dead, and Carlo begins working with him to continue his construction of a new gateway that would lead them to the spirit world. Carlo also meets another creature, the Collector, a spider-like robot built by Litho that hosts Angus's soul fragments and others that have been harvested by Litho. In his life, Carlo never got to see his wife again, as he would later die in those caves. And with the disappearance of Carlos, the management of the nickel per play arcade was left up to Carlos's son, Owen, who also had a son of his own, Wyatt. Wyatt enjoys his father's arcade, and would soon meet another young boy, Lewis Bright, at the location. Though everything was going well, an accident occurred at the arcade which would cause the nickel per play to close down until its grand reopening. This couldn't last, as Owen would later go missing and then be found dead. All of this caused the nickel per play arcade to go out of business for the last time and permanently close down. After school, a young girl, Sarah Covetman, a girl who had recently moved from the less wealthy side of town, went into Happy Hollow, a forest nearby her new elementary school. She was gathering flowers when suddenly she saw a little white, furry, rabbit-looking thing that, after recollection, she said to have had too many eyes. She chased this rabbit near a cliffside, where she was cornered by her 3 bullies, who had bullied her relentlessly since then. They were playing with matches and soon started a fire. Sarah and the bullies panicked, and in the panic, Sarah accidentally pushed one of the bullies off the cliff, killing them. The now even more panicked bullies were also killed. She was never found to be guilty for the murder, and this traumatic experience would allow Litho to connect himself to Sarah. Although this was bad enough, to make it worse, Sarah's parents would later go missing, and Celio Klein, Sarah's therapist, would take on the role of her guardian. Elsewhere, Litho builds a warehouse for Watchful Eye Toys, his new business he would use to gather essence. This warehouse would be built above the old mansion and cave system Litho had been inhabiting for the past thousands of years. Sarah would go on to meet Lewis Bright and Oliver Acrimony, and they would come up with a plan to found a children's recreational center that would include colorful animatronics that could interact and play with the children. These dreams would be supported by one of their teachers, Eric Gale, who had recently adopted a child named Carly. Eric would tell them about a statewide robotics contest where the winners would win an emptied-out warehouse owned by Watchful Eye Toys. Lewis, Oliver, and Sarah would win the contest and finally have the resources they need to create their dream. Dreamworld! 'Cause this place is brighter than a star, but you'll find... Sarah, Lewis, and Oliver would work tirelessly on the facility and animatronics. But during this, Sarah would meet Litho and the Collector, as well as Carlos's spirit, who would contact Sarah over the phone. Litho claimed that he could, with Sarah's help, create immortality. Enticed by this offer, Sarah signed a contract and started working with Litho and using the Dreamworld facility as a cover-up for her experiments. She started with 3 animatronics that were scrapped due to the incident of Show 02/07, it says both, a test run of the animatronics. Her goal was to create new life, and although she did not complete this task, she came close when she trapped the souls of the 3 children she had killed in the past inside of the animatronics. She quickly changed her goal to prolonging life instead of creating new life by the suggestion of Carlos, who had possessed the Pegasus animatronic known as Winnie. Sarah was in need of a soul, and what she ended up doing was killing Lewis to harvest his essence. They had some disagreements on how the facility should be ran when Sarah told her plan to Lewis, so she killed him for it. Oliver was oblivious to this fact and had just assumed Lewis had gone missing, though he was still sad that he had lost one of his best friends. Even with the death of a founder, the Dreamworld facility would soon become open for business a few weeks later. This was a rushed opening, and most of the animatronics were not able to talk, even though that was their main purpose. Well, all of them except Starlight. Star was an animatronic made for the purpose of acting in the Starlight Theater, the bottom floor of the facility. You see, the only reason Star could talk is because Star was alive. Well, he He wasn't alive. He was more possessed by Lewis. After all, he'd always wanted to be a star. Eric Gale was also helping Oliver and Sarah, as he knew it would be harder to run the facility with the loss of a key member. He was also helping them before this, but now he started doing Lewis's tasks because no one else really wanted to. When doing a routine checkup on the Winnie animatronic, Star informs Eric that if he wants to know what happened to Lewis, then he would have to go inside of his house, Lewis's house. In there, he'll find answers to what happened to Lewis. Eric follows his advice and goes to Lewis's house that night. Sadly, this house would be his grave. He is burnt down in a fire started by Winnie, who had overheard Star and Eric's conversation. Along with this death, Winnie would go on to kill Mike, a recent employee of the Dreamworld facility, by crushing him in a trash compactor. Later, he would kill another employee, Alyssa. After that, another employee would die, Andrew Owens, though this was due to the Glory animatronic, who is currently being possessed by Alyssa, and not Winnie. Winnie then kills 3 lost children in the Dreamworld facility. Sarah is displeased by all the death, and for that gets taken over by Litho, who begins controlling her and using her as his new form. Eric would become Ribbon Dancer, although he would switch from being himself and not being himself. Mike goes on to possess Rex. Alyssa possesses Glory, the 3 children end up possessing the triplets, and Andrew goes on to possess Morris, an animatronic mascot for the Watchful Eye Toys Company, that partners up with Dreamworld to make Twimblos, little creatures that gather essence and bring it to the collector. After Litho's possession, Winnie kills Carly, Eric's daughter, who goes on to become the Chair animatronic, and Litho kills Oliver's younger siblings, who go on to possess Lolly and Pop. Worried about all these disappearances, Oliver hires Damien Klein, the younger sibling of Celio Klein. Damien is a private paranormal investigator who can see ghosts, essence, and ghost activity with his right eye. This causes Oliver to get close to the truth, and Litho doesn't want him ruining his plans. He attempts to kill Oliver by trapping him in the bottom of a hollowed-out TV. However, Oliver doesn't die and starts plotting his revenge on Sarah. Around the time Lewis, Sarah, and Oliver won the robotics contest, Lewis and Wyatt had started dating. Sadly, Lewis would have to move to start working on the Dreamworld facility. Wyatt made Lewis promise that he'd text him every week, and Wyatt would go to the facility to look for Lewis if he ever stopped. Of course, Lewis died. Therefore, Wyatt started working at the Dreamworld facility to try and find him. Wyatt films his experience at the facility to try and expose Dreamworld. Wyatt would then send his videos to Rainbot, the in-universe Rainbot, not the actual one, who would share them online. During one of his days at the facility, the building collapses, and Wyatt gets stuck in the Starlight Theater, the lowest floor of the facility, with Star. Wyatt and Star attempt to escape, though realize that all the animatronics have been taken over by a virus that causes them to hunt down every human being they see, thinking of them as Sarah. This virus was created by Oliver, who was attempting to kill Sarah for revenge. Wyatt comes to find that all the animatronics besides Star, Ribbon Dancer, and Winnie have been infected by this virus. This is because Ribbon Dancer is too broken to be affected by it. Star is only affected by it when he has his Scarlet mask on, and Winnie was closed off from the public, so there was no way Oliver could get to him. Around this time, Sarah sends Winnie out of the facility to deal with Rainbot. Soon Wyatt frees most of the animatronics, while the others help Sarah, disguised using an animatronic mask, and Winnie hold Oliver hostage. Eventually, Wyatt, Damien, Star, Ribbon Dancer, the triplets, Rex, Glory, and Oddity, a Twimblo, confront Sarah, though she quickly escapes to the lowest floor, below Starlight Theater. Oddity, Wyatt, and Star follow her down. Down there, they discover Litho's horde of dead bodies, Allison's ghost, who had helped Wyatt earlier that day, and the Collector. Wyatt sets the Collector free, though is immediately interrupted when Litho confronts them. Seeing everything he had worked so hard on fall to ruin, he puts everything back together and tricks the population that the Dreamworld facility closed down years ago in the early 2000s, and is now having its grand reopening by using a fake website that Winnie forced Rainbot to make, threatening them with death. In doing this, Winnie also has to reset the memories of the animatronics, all except Star, who convinces Winnie not to, with the promise that he won't tell the others what happened. Wyatt takes up residence at Celio's house with Damien and Oliver. A girl named Hazel, who had her birthday on the day of the facility's collapse and befriended the 3 scrapped animatronics while it was collapsed, meets Allison, as his ghost was tied to his violin and thrown out of Dreamworld to be crushed by a trash compactor until Hazel saved him. Allison convinces Hazel to steal important documents from the Dreamworld facility in order to expose them. Celio also goes to try to talk to Sarah about what has happened, though ends up getting trapped in the facility. Wyatt and Damien then break into the Dreamworld facility to help Celio escape. In doing this, they also are able to give the animatronics their memory back. Elsewhere, Norman and Morris, the spokesperson and mascot of Watchful Eye Toys, begin planning something. And that's the end of our story for now. Now, Rainbot has said that they will be making a season 2 of this, which, yay. Now, some of this could end up being disproven and probably will, but bye.